Alright, hello and welcome back. Now we are getting into some hands-on GreenSock stuff. So first off, I'll say that you should have your CodePen account already created and set up. If you don't have one already, please go to codepen.io and create one. That'll make it easier for you to follow along, which I highly recommend. So here I have an open CodePen project. Just a quick word on the setup. I have the HTML is over here, and the SVG is embedded in there. I have a viewport that's 600 pixels wide by 600 pixels tall, representing pixels, actual SVG pixels of 1000 by 1000. And the object we'll be animating today is this logo right in the top left corner, and that is represented by this group with the ID logo 1. And one more thing, if you click on the JS setup, you see here that I've pulled in a tweenmax.min.js file from the CDN, so that pulls right into the CodePen and makes that available to us. So if you follow the URL that displays at the bottom of your screen, you can just fork this project and everything will be set up for you and ready to go. Okay, so let's start with tweenmax. Okay, so one good thing about tweenmax is that, or GSAP in general, is that it has a very easy and consistent API. So once you've learned the first 5 or so functions, you've pretty much learned most of how the other functions work. So it makes it easy to go through the documentation and pick up more and more about the animation platform in general. So we'll start with the first 3 that I'll show you here. And let's take a look at our logo here. This logo on the top left corner. Let's say I want to animate our logo from the top left corner, where it is right now, to the top right corner of the viewport. Well, to do that, first I'll need a call to our global tweenmax object, and then I'll call a tweening function, and the first one we'll learn about is the to function. In the to function, we're going to pass 3 main parameters. The first parameter is your target object, and this can be a string selector, much like you have in jQuery, or it could be the actual object itself. Maybe you retrieve the object through jQuery, or just by querying a DOM, you can pass an actual object as the first parameter, and that's your target object. So our target object is the logo. Next parameter is the duration of our animation, and we want that to last for 1 second. And then we have a final parameter that we're going to pass, and that is an object that contains all the attributes that we want to animate. And since we want to animate from the top left corner to the top right, we're going to be animating the X attributes. And I know the X attribute is going to be animated from where it is now, which is 0, to 850. So the to function targets your object and animates its properties from wherever they exist currently to the values you pass in the third parameter. And so let's hit run, and we'll see that animate across the screen. There we go. We just created our first tween, animating the logo from the top left corner of the viewport to the top right corner of the viewport. Okay, so let's go back to this object parameter we have here, the third parameter. We can pass as many attributes that we want to animate also. So I could add a Y attribute as well, meaning I'd like to animate along the Y axis. So I'll give it a value of 830 because I want it to animate from its current location here in the top left corner down to the bottom right. So I'll hit run and we'll try that. It's as simple as that. Okay, now if you take a look at how this object is animating or traveling across the screen, you may notice something. You may notice that it's traveling from top left to bottom right at a fairly consistent rate. So it's not varying its speed, it's fairly consistent, no acceleration, and it's a bit mechanical. So sometimes that's not what you want when you're animating. You want more natural movement than that. And to accommodate that, GreenSock allows us to specify what are called our own ease-in functions. And there are several of them. In this case, I'm just going to use one of them available to us. So let's see what this one does. Okay, let's run it one more time. You may notice now that rather than traveling at a consistent speed, the logo is starting off slowly at the beginning, it's speeding up in the middle, and then slowing down in the end. And that's because that's what this first object name indicates. It says apply this type of easing to my object when you animate it, and ease in when you start it, that means start off slowly, and ease out when you're ending the animation, that means slow down towards the end. There are other varieties of this. There's the ease in, and I'll hit run so you can see what that is. And that essentially just starts off slow and then speeds up until the end of the animation. And then there's the ease out, which is the opposite of that. So it starts off at full speed and then slows down towards the end. So I'll keep it at ease in, ease out, because that's what we'll use most of the time, or you'll find that you use that quite a bit. How did I know to use this ease in function? Well, GreenSock, if we go on their website, they provide us a nifty tool called the GreenSock Ease Visualizer, and there's a URL at the bottom of your screen, and it shows you all the wonderful easing functions available to you in your animations. And you can click any one of these and watch a simulation of the movement and the easing. So the first one, that's a power 0, that's a fairly linear animation, no easing, so the object travels at a constant speed, and that's the default. The one I used in a last example is a power 4. You can see that has a more realistic acceleration and deceleration. If you look at the bottom here, you'll see the various options we have. You have the ease in out, and the ease out, as I explained to you. Now, you can go through all of these and just take a look at how they all behave and perform. The ones we will be using in our final animation project is the back and the elastic. So if you take a look at the back first, you see that the object is animating from this position to this position, but this easing function adds some what's called anticipation. It draws back a bit and then starts traveling, and then it overshoots its final destination by a bit and then comes back to where it's supposed to stop. I'll hit run one more time. And that's what it looks like when you select the ease in, ease out option. If we just do the ease in, then it only has the anticipation. And if we select the ease out, then it only has the overshoot, as you can see. And then there are other ones like bounce, which are fairly handy for depending on the type of animation you want to achieve. But for the most part, we will be using power 4, back, and elastic. So I encourage you to visit this page, just play around with these and familiarize yourself with what's available to you as far as easing functions go. Back to our CodePen. Let's animate some more. First of all, I'll comment this out and hit reset. Okay, now let's say I want to animate my logo from top left to the top right, and then after that from the top right to the bottom right. Okay, well, I already know how to use the to function, so let's try that. Go to logo 1. I know I want to animate it on the x-axis, so we'll set that to 850. And then I know that I want to animate it down the y-axis, so perhaps that will work, maybe. Let's try it and find out. So if I do that, it looks like it ran the animation on the X and the Y at the same time. And that's obviously not what I want. So in order to achieve what I want, I need to use another attribute that GreenSock provides, and that is called a delay. Since I know that the first portion of my animation is running for 1 second, I'm going to add a delay to the second leg and ask it to wait 1 second before executing. So I do that and hit run. Now it does what I want. So that's using the delay. Now, so you're familiar with this to function, which takes your target object and accepts a set of attributes in an object parameter, and it animates your object from its current state to whatever state is reflected in this parameter that you passed, right? So that's the to function. There's another function called the from function, and that is exactly what you might think. It's the reverse of the to, and I'm going to comment these first two out. And its API is exactly the same as the to. We pass the target object first. I give it a duration, but this time, rather than the parameters being the end destination, we're saying we want you to animate from these parameters. So in this case, I'm going to ask it to animate from the X equals 850 position to the current position. So it's going to animate from here, top right, to the top left. The top left, keep in mind, remember, it's the starting position. So I hit run, and that's what it does. From says, hey, this is my, take note of my starting position, and now jump to this state and animate back to where I am. And that's what it's done here. So that's the from function, fairly straightforward. There's another one that combines both the to and the from, and that's called the fromTo. And that does not use the current state of your object at all, but rather you just indicate starting state and an end state. So you tell it where you want to start and where you want to end. And for this example, I'm going to ask it to animate from the bottom left to the bottom right. So that would be X 0 and then Y 830 for the starting location, and animate to X 850 and Y 830. Okay, so it's going to now animate from bottom left to bottom right. I hit run, and that's exactly what it does. So now you know these first three functions, fromTo, from, and to. They have a fairly consistent API, all of them. So I'd advise you to go ahead and play around with this pen a little more, explore all the different attributes that you can animate. I mean, one interesting one you can check out is the opacity, and that's controlled by an attribute called auto alpha. What I can do is I can add this here and say start from full opacity to like a fairly transparent state. So start from 100% opacity to, let's say, 20%. Okay, and so that'll animate from here to here, but it'll fade out your object as it gets towards the end of its animation. So let's hit run, and there you go. So go ahead and play with this pen, and we'll come back in the next video and I'll introduce 3 more functions to you.